as the whole world moves on like nothing ever happened, I need to remind you, the Epstein files are not released. 3 million emails might sound like a lot. However, as of right now, the publicly released files only represent about 2% of the total FBI's Epstein file data. And don't get me started on the redactions, bro. That being said, Epstein's empire, his evil, insanely tapped-in role in the world of geopolitics, intelligence agencies, miners, and pizza.
Pizzagate was totally made up. It was an outrageous allegation.
Has never been more clear. So today I will essentially be going through every single thing you need to know about the big Stein, from Trump to Brexit to Israel to Palantir's rise to $40 million lottery fraud to $500 billion EU insider trading to Kurdish kidnappings to the most valuable, most holy piece of fabric on planet Earth, to these insane plans like introducing 1 million Russians to ethnically purify Israel's population, or, you know, genetically modifying pigs' hooves to make bacon kosher, to multiple alleged murders, to Ghislaine Maxwell's dad being the most powerful Israeli spy in history, to Elon Musk begging and begging to get let into the only perverted club more exclusive than Berghain, to the American government's top dogs serving their own children up to Epstein themselves, and much more. I'm gonna break it all down for you right now, bruh. Before that though, one big disclaimer you need to understand about all the new files you've been seeing over the last month or two is that they are very carefully curated to protect certain interests. You may have noticed all the conspiracy theory type files came out. However, none of the concrete evidence against any of the usual suspects did. It's not necessarily misinformation, it's misdirection. Like, I wonder why the word "don't" is redacted so heavily throughout the FBI's database. Don T. However, that being said, these new Epstein files do contain some useful information. More specifically, potentially the most sickening, evil, depraved, satanic horrors any human can witness. Horrors which were committed by a wide range of Western elites, leading to a nuclear pedophile fallout we're seeing unfold right now. Politicians resigning all over Europe, the Clintons going to trial, human trafficking investigations launched in Turkey, Poland, Lithuania, and more, Pizzagate being proved true, the world's most insane bank account name ever in history being crowned, massive speculation on the deadliness of Epstein's death circulating, Big Ep's Russian intelligence links getting exposed, which funnily enough, media in my country has focused on a lot more than the new massive treasure trove of Israeli intelligence links that are in these files. And oh, how could I forget, we got Bill Gates' wife doing a whole media tour to let us know that multi-billionaires are not actually amazing, great, eco-friendly, humanitarian, ethical geniuses that we should worship, which is crazy. I did not know that. I had actually no idea. Thank you, Bill Gates' wife. I had not figured that one out, bro. Thank you. And of course, we have Trump concluding that all the Epstein issues are now solved. That's it. That's enough. Let's leave it at that, folks.
Also, a court hearing over redaction failures in the Epstein files has now been cancelled. Lawyers for survivors had asked the court to intervene because the files contained some victims' images and their names. Meanwhile, President Trump is calling for the country to move on.
I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally, by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
I don't think they should, bro. I really hope Americans are not gullible enough to just move on now. Because, dude, not only did they absolutely get Trump, they got him so bad, his name was mentioned more in the Epstein files than Jesus' name is mentioned in the Bible. Trump's name appears in the Epstein files more than Harry Potter's name appears in all 7 Harry Potter books, bro. However, you might be wondering why conveniently conveniently, you haven't seen any actual concrete evidence against our king. Well, please note, these files were released by the DOJ extremely late past the legal deadline. Why did it take them so long though? Because they have literally been working stimulant-induced overtime hours attempting to flag down and redact any information linked to the king himself. We've known this for months now, not only via DOJ whistleblowers, but also you can figure out the truth by looking into Pam Bondi's eyes whilst she obviously lies. Bars.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. You won't do it today, but eventually you will.
Also, please note only roughly half the files were released in this new drop, and there were hardly any videos included. Only 0.06% of the new files are videos. And we all know that videos/photos are the infamously incriminating, compromising Epstein material, not his emails. You think his emails are bad? Shit, they ain't even the tip of the wiener, bruh. Not only is this illegal, the DOJ were meant to release all of the files, they're also over-redacted in illegal ways. The infamous black boxes are redactions. They are only meant to protect Epstein's victims or innocent random people. But take some of these emails, for example. Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. How about this? New Brazilian just arrived. Sexy and cute. 9 years old. Do you have the photo of you and girls in Paris where you looked fat and retarded? Okay. Where are you? Are you okay? I loved the torture video. Moroccan for sale. These don't sound like random people emails to me. I don't know, call me crazy. I don't think an Epstein victim would have asked him these questions. So why is the sender redacted? Maybe because they suspiciously matched the dates and locations to Netanyahu and his diplomatic team, or maybe they matched Trump and his way of talking. See, you might find it interesting to know, despite Trump being named thousands and thousands of times in the Epstein file database, despite 40% of the files being emails, despite the two being best friends for over a decade, you can't find a single email between Trump and Epstein in the new file drop. The only people who are redacted are victims, you say? Okay, sure, bro. Matter of fact, all of Epstein's victims came together to state how unhappy and disgusted they are with the DOJ's protecting of a select few evil satanic abusers that occasionally may or may not have neckussies dangling off their chins. A few of the statements from the victims read, DOJ committed what may be the single most egregious violation of victim privacy in one day in the United States history. I have never come forward. Now I am being harassed by the media and others. This is devastating my life. They are talking here about how the abusers' names and details and everything was redacted most of the time. However, the victims were hardly redacted throughout the entire files when they were initially released. Their names, personal details, emails, phone numbers, addresses, which is extremely bad for these women because you have to consider how powerful Epstein was and how powerful the people around him were. They've made people disappear before. The law doesn't really apply to these cases, as I will really explain a bit further into this video. Just give me a sec. The letter from Epstein's victims to the DOJ reads, this latest release of Jeffrey Epstein files is being sold as transparency, but what it actually does is expose survivors. Once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed, whilst the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. This is outrageous. As survivors, we should never be the ones named, scrutinized, and re-traumatized, whilst Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. This is a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve. Virginia Roberts Giuffre alone reported many abuses connected to Epstein's network, yet the public still does not have the full truth about who enabled him, who participated in his exploitation, and who has been shielded for years. Hundreds of women have come forward with additional reports like hers. The scale of this failure is staggering and indefensible. The DOJ cannot claim it's finished releasing files until every legally required document is released and every abuser and enabler is fully exposed. We need to directly hear from Attorney General Pam Bondi when she appears before the House Judiciary Committee on February 11th. Survivors deserve answers and the public deserves the truth. This is not over. We will not stop until the truth is fully revealed and every perpetrator is finally held accountable. As we've always said, this is not about politics. We hope Democrats and Republicans will stand with survivors in continuing to demand the full release of the Epstein files. And then they sign off with over 18 victims signing the letter. But if this sounds a bit conspiracy theory-like, and you want confirmation that the DOJ redacted Trump's name all throughout the files, probably with the help of some AI technology, since Trump is in bed with every single American AI tech billionaire, well, I have some pretty concrete proof for you. All throughout the Epstein file database, you can find funny instances of the word don't being redacted. Now what's so special about the word don't? I wonder, I don't know why on earth they would want to redact that, man. Must just be some weird coincidence. Now, just look at this. It's an email thread about either an Epstein party in Edmonton, Canada, or an Epstein party in Florida. I can't really tell, but you can see the sender's name is redacted. However, I'm pretty sure it starts with a T, and I think this might be a P. I could be schizo, but it seems a bit too coincidental to not be Trump's name. Now scroll down a bit and look, but I don't think. I do think this is an email with a couple Don T's redacted. That's what I do think, bro. If that's the case, they've basically used AI and DOJ employees, obviously, to just scour this whole thing, flag anything that sounds like Donald Trump, so Don T has accidentally been redacted loads. And I really struggle to come up with another reason why they would redact don't. If this big file drop seems like insane and an overload of horror and disgust that you can't really process into a specific conclusion apart from the fact that the world is literally on fire, that is intentional. DOJ has meticulously coordinated their Epstein file release to be extremely confusing, but also to specifically incriminate random people or random-ish people that aren't in the political world, like Harvard professors, famous doctors, famous entertainers, etc. B, Trump's political opponents, including the widespread posting of obviously AI posts of Zohran Mamdani as a kid with Bill Clinton and Epstein with hundreds of thousands of likes on Instagram, by the way, which has led groups of right-wing New Yorkers to go out, follow him around, and heckle him in public because his mum's film was mentioned within the files because they were talking about watching films. And if we discount these obviously fake nothing burgers, of which there are many in these files, do all these people who were incriminated by the new file releases deserve to be tried by an international court, then hung, drawn, and quartered, and have their remains put into an atomic cannon and shot into the Earth's orbit? Yes, I'm not saying they don't. The idea that because I don't like Trump, I would want Bill Clinton to walk away scot-free from this. No, obviously not, you dumbass. What about Joe Biden, bro? He had the files for 4 years, bro. But Joe Biden, he had the files, bruh. You stupid lefties. You didn't even think about that one, did you? I got you there. I got you. Bro, dude, if 2 + 2 ain't 3, kill Joe Biden. Take his life. On Joe Biden's life, 1 + 2 is 7, bro, I swear. And his son too. Vaporize that whole family into dust. Okay, I see people commenting this like I'm a Democrat. Bruv, I'm from a whole different country, man. I don't give a shit about your political parties. I really dislike both of them, okay? However, just because liberals like Bill Clinton are obviously guilty, it doesn't mean MAGA aren't. They got Steve Bannon sharing sharing endless intelligence on right-wing pro-Russian movements across Europe to Epstein. They got Howard Lutnick sharing the ages of children he was bringing to the island. Like, okay, if it was just a family visit, why would the ages be relevant? Would you ever feel the need to specify the ages of your kids to your mate before pulling up to his place to visit? I probably wouldn't. They got Clarence Thomas being brought up many times in the FBI complaints. They got Elon Musk begging and pleading to be allowed on the island so desperately that Epstein himself had to ask, "Do you think I'm retarded? By the way, don't bring anyone over 25, you loser." This guy Elon was talking about, "Oh, I've got nowhere to go on Christmas. I'm so lonely on Christmas. Please let me on the island, bro. I want to have fun, bro, please." Also, Elon Musk's daughter just claimed she was asked to visit unspecified parties around this time when she was very much underage. So, Mr. Howard Lutnick, you say it was you were just bringing your kids to the island for a little vacation, huh? They also got Peter Thiel.
Met Epstein a few times as well, and I think...
How'd you get introduced?
It was Reid Hoffman in Silicon Valley introduced us in 2014. But it was basically, and I didn't.
When you were introduced to him, how was he described to you?
He was described as one of the smartest tax people in the world.
Interesting.
And I probably was my moral weakness that I.
Well, how could you have known back then? He had never been arrested.
And this was 2014. It was post arrest.
Oh, so his arrest was the first arrest, right?
Yeah,
which was like
07, 08.
Okay. And so,
but you assume he didn't go to jail for that long.
Right.
It was probably not as serious as alleged. There was certainly the illusion that there were all these other people that I trusted.
I mean, they got Trump's spiritual advisor months ago. And dude, if the guy spiritually advising you has crimes like this in his closet, I think it's probably quite likely you have it as well. I feel like that's something that would transfer over in the spiritual advisory sector. You know, like you probably figure that one out about each other if you were spiritually connected. Another tactic the DOJ employed to protect Trump is by packing out the files with a load of bullshit, a load of useless, confusing bullshit. There were 3 million entries in this drop. I would hazard a guess they are the 3 million least damning files possible, which can be backed up by just randomly scrolling and oh, this is a very famously publicly released photo with Melania's face redacted. Okay. This is a relatively unimportant business email with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk's name is redacted just badly enough to see and cause a bunch of drama. Oh, just including screenshots from random adult films that are obviously just adult films, because if you reverse search them, you'll find said adult videos openly just on Google, which by the way, I would recommend you don't do if you don't plan on bleaching your eyes after viewing them. And oh, of course, countless random videos of some random people they redacted just sloppily enough so that now everyone's trying to find out who these unimportant guys are. Him and many other random people have intentionally been just about leaked to lead us down rabbit holes to dead ends and just anywhere apart from the culprits who are right in front of you. There's also a surprisingly large amount of files in this megalith of information that seem to be in there specifically to ponder to conspiracy theorists. And once again, I'm not saying this shit isn't important to investigate. Of course it is. And Loki, the guy ain't dead. He's either in Tel Aviv or Moscow or Ankara or Riyadh or Wyoming right now. I don't know. Knocking back Earl Grey tea. I don't know. He's somewhere. However, that being said, all of us normie chuds making a massive deal of these type of files is exactly what the Trump regime wants. It's not misinformation, it's misdirection. Stuff like Pizzagate, the Clintons, Epstein death speculations. Be honest with me, we all kind of already knew this shit, no? There was already very, very solid proof of all that, no? So many victims, so many women, so many whistleblowers have said all this shit already, basically. Ghislaine Maxwell is locked away, bro, for like 20 years. She's locked away. She's been found guilty, and all these elites were best friends with her. But what, you only can connect the dots now? If anything, it feels like, to me, honestly, this is all a bit of a distraction to take away attention from the state of America right now. I think the ICE Minnesota situation got too insane for Trump's PR team to manage. I think distracting away from the historically extremely rare cancellation of the US's GDP report is a very big deal. I think the situation with America's foreign policy right now got a bit too out of hand. Iraq, Iran, Syria, Venezuela, Greenland, Puerto Rico, China, and more all have very sensitive developments Trump would rather divert the public's attention away from. And this strategy by the DOJ is almost perfectly what I think Epstein himself would have done.
Yeah,
that's what I would have did. One of the new revelations that came out of these new files is that Epstein was online as fuck, and early on he understood very well how to politically manipulate people, especially right-wingers, via the internet.
Through these files, it got revealed that Epstein met Christopher Fool, the creator of 4chan, and the day after these two met, the 4chan forum of Paul was created. Paul was and is basically a right-wing discussion forum about politics. And by right-wing, I don't mean like a dude from Texas. I mean, these guys think Hitler was not cruel enough. And these guys were behind the 2016 SJW compilations, even playing a big role in getting Trump elected. Basically every single far-right thing ever. And on the other side of the spectrum, Reddit. The user Maxwell Hill on Reddit was the first person ever to reach 1 million Reddit karma. They were also a longtime curator and moderator of r/World News. Basically, this one account had huge power over the entire progressive sphere by curating Reddit to their own liking. And the account was ran by Ghislaine Maxwell.
She had massive power on the left side of Reddit, whilst Epstein had massive power on the right side of 4chan, meaning essentially the 2000s culture war was manufactured by Ghislaine and Epstein, bruh. Now, lots of people think that Ghislaine was Epstein's wife. This is wrong. This is a mischaracterization of their partnership. It was much more business orientated. They weren't even close to being married, and people even speculate whether they were a couple outside of the public eye. She was much more of just a business partner who was introduced to Epstein by her dad, the billionaire media tycoon Robert Maxwell, who 100% worked for Israeli intelligence. He connected Ghislaine to Jeff, and she ran almost all of Epstein's human trafficking logistics, whilst he was like the fixer rich dude who roped in influential men. Ghislaine was also extremely well versed on the internet. And talking about the brain rot online connection to Epstein, I would like to make it clear how I was not on the island, okay? I don't know how many people have seen this fucking bullshit, yeah, but the other day, one of the biggest political commentators on the entire internet decided to imply I'm involved with Epstein or something. Yeah, Hassan Piker, the man himself, posted this on X. My friend who owes me loads of money replied, "Geopolled ... as a joke." It was a joke. It was totally a joke. Then Hassan Piker replied to him saying, "That's what I'm saying!" Exclamation mark. Bro! Yo! The fuck I do, bruh? What? Dude. What did I do? Let's not go there, man. Look, I was there for the free booze, okay? Nothing else. But if you see something like this, it's fake. It's AI, okay? I would never hang out with Keir Starmer, man, okay? I would never hang out with him. This photo cannot be real. I wouldn't be caught dead, flicked up with Starmer, okay? Sorry, just needed to clear that one out. But look, back to the new files drop. Even if all the files were released in this manner, there is still shit we will simply never ever know. America's authorities didn't even raid raid what I consider to be Epstein's most important property, his New Mexico ranch.
So why did I buy a ranch in New Mexico in 1993? So that gives you some sense. So I would have funded it in 1990. Los Alamos, which was the high-energy lab up in New Mexico, was losing all its scientists.
And Los Alamos, it was where Oppenheimer and where a lot of the nuclear weapons program, the bomb.
That's where the Manhattan Project.
Manhattan Project was
yes,
as Los Alamos, and you bought your property out in New Mexico to be near that?
Yes, because the scientists were going to they cut the funding for high-energy physics. But the people who worked in Los Alamos would still be in the Santa Fe area.
Now, the reason this is significant is because Epstein's New Mexico ranch is supposedly where he carried out scientific experiments. This is where Epstein ran human farms, which is alleged by the newly released files. There's a lot of mentions of that. There is a diary entry in the Epstein files of a teenage girl who writes that she was taken from her mother minutes after her birth and then used by Jeffrey Epstein as a incubator. And she also suggests in this diary she's a secret child of Epstein. And there's many more references of like human science experiments across various email threads. And Epstein really tried to create close relationships with doctors, professors, scientists in New Mexico, people he could blackmail and then utilize in apparent science experiments, which also included him trying to genetically modify pigs to not have hooves so bacon could be kosher. Now, if these science experiments did actually take place, I can guarantee you they took place on the New Mexico ranch, not the island at all. It was never touched by the police until he died, and the ranch was quickly bought for an undisclosed price by a newly formed private company which distributed the profits to everyone Epstein owed money, aka his closest acquaintances. This happened with almost all of Epstein's assets, so a lot of really rich people made a little bit of a bag off Epstein's death. Yet surprisingly, he didn't leave his fortune to Ghislaine Maxwell, which boosts my theory that they didn't even really like each other that much. They were mainly just business partners working a compromat operation for one country, two countries, three countries, who knows. Jeffrey's bread was pretty much all left to some random girlfriend he had a fling with late in his life. Now, it didn't really end up with her, but just out of principle, seems very weird for the tight-knit couple that Epstein and Ghislaine were meant to be, right? And Ghislaine was specifically liked by Trump. People never really talk about this. They were really close, man. And if you factor in that, plus the fact that Trump and Epstein have again and again countlessly been described as best friends, well, what more do you need? Do the files even matter then? Genuinely, what more information do you need, bro? 3 million more files? Well, at least maybe the remaining files would actually have incriminating stuff in them, more than just some emails about pizza. Like, damn, I don't know, these guys must fucking love pizza, man. Is it that good? Is it that delicious? Is it that good with a certain type of meat on it, a certain cut of meat as your pizza topping? Does it taste maybe a bit like cream cheese a little bit? I don't know. And just one final point about this to highlight Pam Bondi has been fired. Yes, update, I repeat, Pam Bondi has been fired. Right, on the surface this seems like a pretty monumental moment in the Epstein case. However, in reality, sorry to be that doomer, but I honestly think this is just another attempt to clear Donald Trump's name in the history books. Because look, I at least hope that in 2066 they're reading about 2026 in history class with, 100-yard stares on their faces. I want these kids to look back on us like, what the hell were they doing? This is assuming that we make it to the year 2066. I don't know, every day I look at the news it seems less likely. Anyway, I do unfortunately believe that Pam Bondi's expulsion from Kash Patel's Cool Kids Club is really just an attempt to blame it all on the blonde and let the other blonde walk away scot-free, which I can confirm he is doing right now. Matter of fact, I do not believe any prosecution of any form has been levied against a single Epstein associate since the files came out, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. And just one final point about this to highlight how twisted and sick the DOJ's latest file release was, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of photos of kids in these files. I cannot really talk about it or show any of it on here, but they're really bad, about as bad as it gets for this topic. And for the most part, they are completely censored, rightfully so, obviously. However, apparently, there were a few photos that slipped through the cracks when the files were initially released uncensored, meaning the DOJ actually published onto the internet. I've heard that they're all thankfully redacted now. However, the fact that they scoured the Epstein files meticulously enough to redact Donald Trump's face multiple times, the word "don't" multiple times, Ghislaine Maxwell's face multiple times, Trump's name, his email. They redacted thousands of perpetrators' faces and thousands of perpetrators' emails. However, they didn't check the files closely enough to remove instances of child. That's about the only thing I think should be redacted from these files, right? They had one fucking job. However, they did accidentally forget to redact another file, which was very quickly deleted after it was discovered by the public. This file was essentially a list of Epstein-related complaints made against Trump to the FBI, of which there were hundreds. Now, the FBI do have an extensive history of simply ignoring any claims made against Trump, and an even more extensive history of ignoring claims made against Epstein. And there's also an extensive history of victims who chose to circumvent the FBI, for example, by giving press conferences without going to the authorities about their not so nice experiences with Trump or Epstein. There's a very clear history of those people being harassed to the point of life or death, and they usually disappear from their public image pretty quick. Now, considering that, it might not surprise you that some of the FBI complaints the FBI forgot to redact quote an Epstein victim who alleged that Trump's security guards told her she would end up as fertilizer on his golf course if she spoke up regarding the horrors these guys put her through. Another complaint mentions being buried in Trump's golf course. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's just a couple complaints, nothing concrete. It's not like there's any coincidental golf course burials that Trump would partake in the future that would make these complaints statistically impossible to be fake. Like, that would have to be so much of a coincidence. There would be a 99.999 chance these FBI complaints would be truthful if he actually did that at some point. That couldn't possibly be. Okay, end of video. Thank you guys. Make sure to subscribe so I can beat Netanyahu by 10x. Bye guys. See you later. Wait. Hold on. You're not trying to tell me that Trump buried his ex-wife who died under suspicious circumstances in his fucking New Jersey golf course, which he then used as a tax break because now his golf course is registered as a cemetery, not a golf course, and all whilst his ex-wife consistently always stated that she hated golf. Oh, and this particular ex-wife did used to drive around with Ghislaine Maxwell and pick up under Hispanic schoolgirls outside schools, parked up in a flashy car to recruit them for massage work. And this particular ex-wife of Trump's was potentially considered by Epstein to have too much information regarding his island operation, and she was well known to be a bit of a drunk, bubbly, bombastic, loud, loose cannon, a bit of a loudmouth. And then one day she fell down the stairs and suffered a fatal blunt trauma injury to her torso, and the first responders instantly completely determined it a lack of foul play, so it was never investigated. Now we've confirmed that these FBI complaints may hold more weight than you initially might think. I just want to point out that another few complaints were based around how Trump in, I think, 1987 held a party at Mar-a-Lago called calendar girls, in which Epstein brought young girls in and Trump would auction said girls to members of the club for the night. What? And during the auction, Trump would, measure something to determine each girl's value. I'm not gonna say what it is, but the FBI complaints sheet genuinely has like 50 complaints like this in it, so it's no surprise this was almost instantly deleted from the files database as soon as it turtle-headed into the public eye. The files are being more and more redacted every day. They were altered as we speak, day by day. On Monday, if you searched Donald Trump into the search bar, there were
2,400
files. And on Wednesday,
1,819.
They're removing evidence pointing to Trump in real time. Go check it. Go check it. I bet it's slower. And despite this massive scale censorship we're seeing, despite MAGA parading these new files around like some revolutionary findings, even though we pretty much knew this all already. But no, to MAGA, every billionaire on earth is the most depraved, evil, Satanist lunatic, apart from one. One of them's cool. One of them gets a pass, bro. One of them didn't do none of this, I swear.
Who do you think are the three most benevolent billionaires?
What do you mean by the word benevolent?
Just well-intentioned, positive billionaires who you think are creating, net positive societal progress.
Trump, our president. I think he's a good one.
Despite all that bullshit, these files do still bring a lot of new findings to the table. So many different public figures, politicians, countries are involved in this scandal. It's absolutely insane. It's unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime, especially here in the UK. Shit is hitting the fan. And now I'm gonna try cover all the most important geopolitical findings in the new Epstein files, which in my opinion is the most important shit you need to know when it comes to Epstein. Trump's DOJ has done an extremely good job at taking attention away from this side of the files. Everyone's been busy with all the conspiracy theory stuff, which I mean, you do you. But you know what I think's more important than that shit? Maybe like how, regardless of what country you're from, Epstein probably had his meat stuck up in your nation's politics. This motherfucker was ideologically dry humping every single nation on the planet. Maybe with the exception of like North Korea, but most countries on earth, you know what I mean? Now, to understand the politics of Epstein, you need to consider that he functioned as a billionaire. He lived life as a billionaire. He hung out in circles exclusive to billionaires. However, after his death, he was found to not be a billionaire. He was fake flexing, alright? As I mentioned before, he actually owed a lot of his acquaintances money, but this is because Epstein didn't really work with financial transactions. He had this elite network, which was so elite that money was almost arbitrary to these guys. Every deal he cut was based on favors or blackmail, and the compromat Jeff possessed was far, 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 far more valuable than his conventional net worth, And even if you dismiss all the compromat allegations, it's very clear the more and more I look into Epstein that every connection he made in the world was based around owing favors. Bill Clinton stated in his recent deposition that in the early days he formed a relationship with Jeff because Epstein would let Bill borrow his planes to fly around free of charge as long as Epstein could ride in the plane with him and pick his brains for the duration of the flight.
Mr. President, were you ever in the position to owe Jeffrey Epstein a favor?
I didn't consider that. I thought we had an understanding about the airplanes, that he would let me use the airplane to set up my AIDS programs around the world if I'd agreed to talk to him for an hour about economics and politics on every long leg. I kept my word, and he seemed to honor his.
This is how he kind of wiggled his way into the life he had, which allowed him to stay under the radar for most of his life. Get it? Plane, radar. However, if so, the question which still stands is, how did he get the bread to buy the fucking plane? And in this example, you can use the plane as a metaphor for his entire operation. How did he wiggle his way to the top? How did he find himself in this compromat keeping, political manipulating billionaire lifestyle? The middleman of humanity's evil. Well, that's where Ghislaine Maxwell plus a country or multiple countries' intelligence agencies comes into the picture. Ghislaine Maxwell is the daughter of potentially one of the most powerful men in media media history. He was involved with Thatcher, Prince Andrew, the Falklands War, countless more insane shit. He was a mogul, basically having a monopoly over the UK's entire press, and it's almost guaranteed that he also worked for Israeli intelligence, specifically the agency Mossad. He reportedly had weekly phone calls with the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. Robert visited Jerusalem about once a month, specifically about 50 times between 1988 and 1991. He had insider-only stakes in Israeli media, tech, pharmaceutical industries. This guy was a Mossad asset if I've ever seen one. He used his media empire, including journalists and investigators, to work for the Israeli government. Here is an extremely clear example of that. Israel's nuclear program is completely secret, right? Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, is involved in this. That's right. In 1986, a technician at one of Israel's nuclear facilities called Mordecai Vanunu leaked the first ever photographs and details of Israel's nuclear program to the Sunday Times in London. He believed there was no justifiable reason that we should allow any country to secretly produce nuclear weapons, and he risked his life to expose Israel for doing it. However, unfortunately, the newspaper he leaked this information to was owned by Robert Maxwell's media empire, Mirror newspapers. And regardless of what anyone tells you, in my country, the UK, freedom of press is a myth. Maxwell immediately alerted Mossad to the Sunday Times' upcoming publication. He tipped off Israeli authorities, who then launched a honey trap operation in which a female Mossad agent lured Vanunu from London to Rome. There, he was drugged, abducted, and smuggled to Israel in a shipping container. He was tried in secret, convicted of treason and espionage, and sentenced to 18 years in prison, 11 of which he spent in solitary confinement. Oh my god. Never trust an Israeli baddie, bro. On top of operations like this, Robert Maxwell was highly suspected of keeping compromise, blackmail-worthy information, possibly as part of his intelligence activities. If this is the case, it means he essentially used his gigantic team of journalists, investigators, etc. to sniff out dirt on important people. Even seemingly unimportant information, such as affairs, can really be leveraged as blackmail if you own one of the world's largest media companies, you know? One Coldplay moment on the front page, you're out of your job, out of your marriage. We know this very well. So it's widely considered that Robert used blackmail material plus his influence to make various people do things in his favor, Israel's favor. Sound familiar? Runs in family, maybe? Unfortunately, just like with Epstein, we will never really quite know, because both Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein took their secrets to the grave in very suspicious... Yes, Robert Maxwell fell off his boat and drowned in the Canary Islands in 1991. This is something me and Robert Maxwell actually have in common. Earlier this year, I almost drowned in the Canary Islands. Do not play with them waves in Fuerteventura, bro. Don't do it. Unlike me, however, this Robert Maxwell couldn't muster up the strength to battle the waves and swim to shore, allegedly. He was then buried in arguably Israel's most prestigious burial site, reserved only for the highest elites in Israeli society, the Olive Mound in Jerusalem. His funeral was attended by 6 former heads of Israeli intelligence, and even the Israeli Prime Minister at the time, Yitzhak Shamir, publicly mourned his death, stating he has done more for Israel than can today be said. So look, was Robert Maxwell working with Mossad? You can come up with your own opinion on that one. I'm pretty sure I know mine though. A fun fact about Robert Maxwell is that he was actually Czechoslovakian. Bro went through a whole British businessman rebrand, going from Jan Ludwig Hyman Beinman Mhoch to Robert Maxwell, which is so hilariously stereotypical. That's like a fake name you'd give to the police if you're British. It's funny because Czechia did the exact same thing that Robert did. Now, after Robert Maxwell died under very suspicious circumstances, the public was very surprised to learn he was capping about his bread. Motherfucker was fake flexing on these hoes. He was not a billionaire at all. In fact, he had a massive black hole in his expected net worth and actually owed many people or organizations millions and millions of dollars. Seeing a little resemblance to anyone, maybe? And yeah, since he absolutely worked for Israel, okay, it's pretty clear one of the organizations he would have owed money, favors, and more to would be Mossad. Now, who could we possibly recruit to fill this guy's shoes and carry on the blackmail operations, you know, keeping compromat on behalf of the state of Israel and Israel's allies, which Robert Maxwell was 100% confirmed to be doing? Who could we possibly get to fill this goat's shoes? Surely no one would be perfectly groomed into this lifestyle, and surely no one could simply be handed a huge inheritance debt burden. Surely none of his close circle who literally attended his funeral in Jerusalem could be forced to just carry on the Maxwell operations for us into the 2020s, to the point where Israel's government would finally become so powerful, and alongside organizations like AIPAC or private Israeli lobbyists, Israel could have on the side so much compromising blackmail power over the USA's presidency that they could literally at the click of a finger drag America into Israel's most desired war for the last 50 years, which every other president has said no to this point. Because, you know, we just happen to now have pictures of the president balls deep in Stephen Hawking. So when I ask you to bomb Iran for us, Mr. President, what do you say?
Yes.
And will you come to the Israeli parliament to announce that?
Yes.
And will you accept the title of the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House?
Yes.
I don't know, think what you want to think, but this is my leading theory at least. Obviously, Epstein had connections to a lot of other countries, maybe intelligence agencies. However, the clearest explanation for all the political insanity I'll give the best examples of in a second is that Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, in at least some capacity, were working some blackmail operations for Mossad. Maybe others as well, probably others as well, but conveniently this absolutely cannot be proved through this new batch of DOJ Epstein file releases. However, what can be confirmed is that Epstein had a fucking insane amount of geopolitical motion, which only someone like an intelligence higher up would have. And there is really only one country on earth which operates as secretly and covertly and illegally as Epstein did. You know, for example, having an entire nuclear arsenal kept completely secret. For example, keeping an open air mass camp of millions in the corner of your nation. For example, evading pretty much all international arrest warrants, illegally annexing sovereign countries' land, such as Syria, Lebanon, Palestine. Obviously, I'm talking about Israel. Probably one of the only nations on earth which just simply disregards law completely if breaking the law furthers the state's expansion. We see this again and again with Israel, which could also explain why two Israeli prime ministers who were both extremely good friends with Jeffrey, and 5 Israeli prime ministers which Jeffrey had a connection to, seemingly had no problem with his island antics. Epstein and Trump's ex-lawyer Alan Dershowitz actually admitted to the level of open law breaking which is permitted for Mossad officers.
Could it be that Jeffrey Epstein just had a completely different life that he just did not tell you about? And it may also have included being a spy. You know, why is it surprising if he kept the rest of it from you?
Because telling me that he worked for the Mossad would have given him a get-out-of-jail-free card. I could have gotten him no jail time. If he had told me he worked for the Mossad, for the CIA, he was an intelligence source, it would have been a slam dunk for me to go to whoever I had to go to, even up to the President of the United States, and I would have gotten him a deal with no time at all.
Hang on a second. You mean if he'd said he was working with the Mossad or CIA, then he would get off being a pedophile?
That's right. That's right.
Now, it's funny how he poses this as proof of Epstein's innocence, when in 2008, Epstein did actually get handed a sweetheart prison sentence, an essential pardon, for seemingly no reason. He got no prison time whatsoever, which would obviously as our man Dershowitz confirmed, point to him being an intelligence agent. This is Alexander Acosta. He was the Labor Secretary in Trump's first term. This was Trump's #1 guy. Before that, he was a US attorney. And when Epstein faced his first bout of criminal charges in 2008, after all these allegations first came to light, Acosta let Jeff walk away with the calmest sentencing ever in fucking human history. You know what? I'll just read out the Wikipedia paragraph. In 2007 to 2008, as US attorney, Acosta approved a plea deal that allowed trafficking ringleader Jeffrey Epstein to plead guilty to a single state charge of solicitation in exchange for a federal non-prosecution agreement. One of the craziest things about this to me is that Jeffrey Epstein was in prison for 13 months, right? During those 13 months, he was allowed to fucking leave the prison and work. He was often given work leave. Bro, people work 9 to 5s and they don't get work leave. This guy went to prison and got fucking work leave? And then just consider how fucking obviously fake this guy's job was. It's basically like letting someone out of prison because they gotta make a YouTube video to fit their upload schedule. Like, are we being fucking for real?
Why Sigma males are more attractive than alpha males. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Anthony Spade channel.
But I think we can all agree that Jeff was probably realistically doing some very important work for someone if they genuinely had to let him out of prison to do that work. And we're probably talking the kind of work that the government or an extremely close friendly government might have a special interest in. All I'm saying. And you want to know the cherry on the top for this point? It's been reported and widely accepted that during Acosta's vetting process for his cabinet role in the first Trump administration, he said, word for word, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave him alone." Bruh, that is just an allegation. However, it blew up loads and Acosta has not confirmed nor denied saying it. And for me, that kind of speaks for itself. Now, if you want to know how involved Alan Dershowitz is with Israel, well, maybe just listen to his defense of our man Jeff.
I understand all the feminist groups and the radicals who think this is the worst thing in the world, that anybody ever had any contact with Jeffrey Epstein. Where are all those radical feminists when it comes to the what? Young Jewish girl. What? Me too, except if you're a Jew. I want to have a list of all the radical feminists who are pushing hard to get all these names revealed, and I want to know how many of them have ever actually condemned Hamas.
Okay, so if we run with the theory that Epstein was at least in some capacity involved with a country's intelligence agency, maybe more than one country, it's hard to tell. But if we look at these new files with the assumption that he was running compromat operations for someone, then all the countries and people and organizations involved with Epstein need to be highly, highly, highly scrutinized because they're probably extremely compromised by foreign elite interests, aren't they? And if we're being real, they should probably all get subjected to medieval torture methods, maybe like publicly hung, drawn and quartered, in my humble opinion. So let's go through some. Obviously, it is humanly impossible for me to name and shame all the influential people or countries or organizations involved with the big Jeff, but I'm gonna try and quickly highlight about a dozen of my favorite appearances and some of the sleeper mentions you might not have noticed in these files or involved with these files. So disclaimer, this by no means is a full list of guilty subjects. If you want to find that out, you should probably just Google whoever you are suspicious of and the word Epstein, and honestly, you'll probably find some shit. It's insane the amount of people he was linked to. It's absolutely unbelievable. I would implore you to just put your country's name into the Epstein database search bar and see how many results come up. It's fucking insane. If you want to travel the globe and visit all those foreign countries you dream of visiting without unintentionally looking a bit sus, a bit like a certain someone, then my friend, you need to tap in with the local language. Get some conversational conversational skills under your belt. Fit in like a respectful, non-sus tourist. Anyone who frequently travels will implore you to do this. But I hear you asking, Leo, how can I achieve this? How do you personally get all them basic conversational skills down on your travels? Well, my friend, look no further than the long-time Geopod sponsor, italki. It's a hybrid language learning platform built around personalized one-on-one lessons with real teachers, supported by AI tools to help you improve your speaking and listening skills faster through real conversations with real-time feedback from native speaking teachers who guide your learning every step of the way. Lessons are flexible, affordable, and convenient. This is why I take them. For example, to brush up on my very basic Dutch phrases.
If you say hello, Dutch will start speaking English. And you know, we like doing that, yes?
Yeah.
Then we have hoi.
Hoi.
Super. Goedemorgen.
Goedemorgen.
Which one do we need right now?
Oh, it would be goedemiddag.
Yes, great.
Ich ben Leo.
See you later.
Tot later. italki Plus AI learning tools enhance learning after you take the lesson by automatically generating additional learning content based on your actual lesson. Fun progression features track your learning journey by growing this fish companion. It's great. And best of all, on italki you can pay per lesson, and lessons start only at $5. So click the link in the description to start learning on italki. Buy a lesson for £10 and you'll get £5 off the first lesson using the code Geopod26, and the Geopod is all caps. Don't forget it. Don't forget it, bro. Go sign up now because the discount's only available for the first 50 people. So go do it now, bro. What are you waiting for? But yeah, here's some of my favorites, and I'm gonna have to record this on Facecam because there's no way I'm editing this whole fucking video in this much detail, okay? Allow me. All right, so who do we have first up? Well, only the US lottery. No one too important. Just the US National Lottery. That's right, you remember Epstein's New Mexico Zorro ranch I mentioned before, yeah? Well, turns out it was technically not owned by Epstein. It belonged to his legal entity, the Zorro Trust, which is a fun little legal loophole that almost all elites in the world use to avoid tax and also to operate with complete privacy, which is partly why the New Mexico ranch was never searched. Legally speaking, it wasn't Jeffrey's crib, it was his trust's crib. So legally speaking, the police couldn't really search it. They couldn't raid it. They were investigating Jeffrey, not his trusts. Now, you might be interested to learn that on the 26th of August 2008, news sites reported that the $40 million Powerball lottery was won by a random trust, and the owner is a mystery. Forever it will be a mystery whoever this guy was, man. We just won't know where that 40 mil went. Never. Can you guess the name of that trust though? Zorro f***ing Ranch. Yes, somehow our man Jeffrey got his hands on a winning lottery ticket. Maybe he got it illegally and laundered loads of money for it. Maybe he was involved in some elaborate elite scam and actually made millions and millions off of lottery corruption. However, I refuse to believe the odds that Epstein himself randomly won the lottery, okay? Come on, bro. It's too much of a coincidence, especially since it was conveniently hidden from the public. The whole transaction operated in private because of his trust. And as we've established, he in some form was most likely funded, payrolled by intelligence agencies and billionaires and other elites, which essentially makes the American lottery in this scenario an unofficial tax being paid by unknowing American lottery players going directly into the pockets of billionaires and elites and the top 1%. Because as I mentioned, after Epstein's death, the Zorro assets, including this gigantic lottery win probably, was split up and quietly paid out to Epstein's elite mates he owed money to. The guys he was working alongside with and the guys he was in the red with, you know? And I don't know, I'm wondering if these Zorro assets include the human bodies which were allegedly buried at Epstein's Zorro Ranch. That's right, there's an email in these new files that alleges Epstein had ordered the bodies of 2 foreign girls to be buried in the premises of the ranch. The police are finally now, decades later, digging for these bodies in the ranch's vicinity, finally they're touching what I consider to be Epstein's most valuable property. However, I kind of doubt they'll find anything. It's simply been too long. The bodies could have decayed, been removed. Every crazy scientific thing in this ranch has got to be gone now. There's no chance. There's no shot there's any evidence still on the ranch. Even if there was, it would be extremely hard to find anything because this ranch is genuinely the size of a fucking city. 8,000 acres. That's like 5,000 football pitches. It would take like 3 hours, I believe, to walk the length of Epstein's New Mexico ranch, bro. No one on earth needs that much land. No one can be doing anything good with that much land, bro. Why the fuck do you need 8,000 acres, bro? I really don't think we'll ever know the extent of what this man was up to in New Mexico, bro. Especially with all the scientists he recruited from the defunded American government experiments that were happening in that region. And yeah, this is the property that the US government didn't think it was legally fair game to raid and investigate. Yeah, empty New York townhouse, raid it. Empty Little St. James Island, raid it. Insanely isolated 8,000 acre human science experiment lab, teenage woman burial site, gigantic lottery fraud scheme headquarters. Nah. Actually, let's just not investigate that property one bit, bro. Nah, there's no need, bro. Let's stay away from that one. Don't worry about all that. Bro. Number 2, Palantir. So we all know who Peter Thiel is, right? He's the German/South African/American tech billionaire who is the co-founder of Palantir, a software company specializing in evil AI operating systems heavily utilized by the IDF, ICE, the US Army, and more to precisely sort data and target kids mainly, you know? Really good stuff. This guy came up in Silicon Valley alongside Elon Musk and JD Vance and was very involved with both Trump's 2016 and 2024 campaign. According to the new files, though, he was maybe a little too involved in these campaigns. It's already confirmed that Russian meddling was a big factor in the 2016 presidential election. Firstly, you have Hillary Clinton's emails being leaked and the Democrats getting hacked. Secondly, you have all the social media manipulation, for example, massive bot farms pushing out endless comments, ads, posts about race, immigration, guns, etc. You know, the classic Russian bot farms. This is confirmed. What wasn't really confirmed was the motive and how this all came about. Before the new Epstein files, all we had was this broad understanding that Trump was more pro-Russian than Hillary. Therefore, the Kremlin ordered some sneaky meddling, right? But now we have some more details, and you'll never believe which 2 characters are involved in this shit. Epstein and fucking Peter Thiel. Both these guys played a decent role in facilitating Russian election meddling, probably because it also aligned with their goals. They were both dying for Trump's 2016 win, and they got it by enlisting the help of Mother Russia. These 2, in some capacity, 100% helped put this deal together. I'll put together the whole timeline here if you want to read it through for yourself. It's pretty insane, and in my opinion, it's pretty conclusive. You can read through it right here. Another thing you should probably know about Peter Thiel is that he himself is known to host Epstein-style gay in LA. Another thing you should probably know is that Peter Thiel's boyfriend died from falling off a balcony under some very suspicious circumstances. Another thing you should know about Peter Thiel is that in his free time, he gives private lectures about the Antichrist to his tight-knit Antichrist community. This is really good, man. This is great.
You would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should
this.
the human race survive?
Another thing you should know is how much influence this guy has over the presidency, not just Trump's, but presidencies yet to come in the future. Maybe, for example, you have noticed J.D. Vance hasn't really been present in any of the foreign policy 2026 campaigns. I haven't really seen him at too many Iran or Venezuela press conferences. I haven't seen him at all, actually. Marco Rubio's there, Pete Hegseth's there, but no J.D. Vance, no. I haven't seen him anywhere. I wonder why. Republicans know how bad these decisions are gonna look in 10 years' time, when no one's benefited from the freedom and oil and rare earth minerals that are meant to make us all rich. There's a high risk Americans are gonna look back on Venezuela or Iran like they look back on Iraq. Just a stupid, pointless fight for imperialism that benefited no one apart from massive companies or billionaires. And MAGA donors like Peter Thiel or any other tech billionaires don't want J.D. Vance to be associated with any of this shit because they're banking on him being president one day. Peter Thiel would literally explode with hummus if J.D. Vance became the president. Why? Well, J.D. Vance is literally just a political puppet of Peter Thiel. I'm not even joking when I say that. I'm like 100% sure J.D. Vance has sucked Peter Thiel's toes at least once, okay? Peter Thiel hired J.D. Vance early in his career at his venture capital firm Mithril Capital. After gaining each other's trust and maybe sucking each other's toes a couple times, Thiel financially backed Vance's political rise, including a stupidly big fucking donation, $15 million to Vance's Senate campaign. After getting established in politics, J.D. Vance co-founded a venture capital firm of his own, Naria Capital, with backing from Thiel and other tech investors. So essentially, Thiel is J.D. Vance's sugar daddy. J.D. Vance owes Peter Thiel so many foot massages, it's insane. This means Vance is always gonna act in the favor of Palantir, or all investments and anything done by Peter Thiel or any of Peter Thiel's billionaire mates. Anything daddy wants, Vance will do. Even getting this guy into the Oval Office with Trump, consider it done, father. Consider it done. But if you want to know how much Vance will bend to Thiel, literally and figuratively, just look at his political views. J.D. Vance used to dress up in drag. Here he is making a joke of girls using the urinal. Who would have thought that in 2025, gendered bathrooms and drag would be integral to his rhetoric and his campaign as a vice president? Nowadays, J.D. Vance presents himself as this monotone, Midwest, working class right-wing guy, which could not be further from the truth. This motherfucker was a Democrat venture capitalist from Silicon Valley, the gayest, richest, least working class place on planet fucking Earth, alright? And he used to have the political beliefs to match it.
And so one of the takeaways is not just that the Republican Party base is somehow fundamentally flawed in a way that's unique in American political history, it's that Trump is a really bad candidate, and frankly, I think a really bad person.
I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
My current plan is to vote either third party, or as I joke to my wife, I might write in my dog, because that's about as good as it seems. But, you know, I think there's a chance, if I feel like Trump has a really good chance of winning, that I might have to hold my nose and vote for Hillary Clinton. And at the end of the day, do you believe Donald Trump, who always tells the truth? Just kidding. Or do you believe that woman on that tape?
I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
Like you said, I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
There is definitely an element of Donald Trump support that has its basis in racism or xenophobia. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. I'm definitely not going to vote for Trump because I think that he's projecting very complex problems onto simple villains.
This guy is seriously DL, bro. That's all I got to say. Look at this estrogenic face. Okay, look at those plump, luscious cheeks you can only form from not doing a single hard day's work in your entire life. This guy even changed his voice. He used to speak like this. Now he speaks looks like a prepubescent teenage boy trying to seem cool. You know how little this guy actually cares about religious traditionalism or whatever bullshit Christian values MAGA campaigned on? JD Vance has a Hindu wife. Okay, bro, anti-immigrant, pro-Christian values guy with an Indian Hindu wife. This definitely lines up, okay? And as his initiation humiliation ritual, I'm pretty sure Trump and Peter Thiel made him go on TV and apologize for having an Indian wife.
You just got to talk to the only advice I can give is you just got to talk to the person that God has put you with, and you've got to make those decisions as a family unit. For us, it works out. Now, most Sundays, Usha will come with me to church. As I've told her, and I've said publicly, and I'll say now in front of 10,000 of my closest friends, do I hope eventually that she is somehow moved by the same thing that I was moved in by church? Yeah, I honestly do wish that, because I believe in the Christian gospel, and I hope eventually my wife comes to see it the same way. But if she doesn't, then God says everybody has free will, and so that doesn't cause a problem for me. That's something you work out with your friends, with your family, with the person that you love. Again, one of the most important Christian principles is that you respect free will. What?
Which is so pathetic. Like, come on, bro. Backstabbing your own wife for Peter Thiel. I don't know. This just proves they're sucking each other's toes. I can't lie. Because as soon as Peter Thiel saw the American public flip to MAGA in 2016, he started grooming JD Vance into this perfect MAGA vice president role. I mean, Vance literally said in that exact speech that when he met his wife, he was not religious at all.
In fact, when I met my wife, we were both, I would consider myself an agnostic or an atheist.
So then since 2016, you've conveniently become a traditional Midwest right-wing Christian who is ashamed of his wife's faith when he obviously didn't care before because he married her and had many children with her. You're telling me he had like a spiritual awakening, like a white person in Bali? Okay, bro. Suddenly he brought the eyeliner out. Suddenly he brought the plastic surgery out. Suddenly the voice dropped in pitch. He basically transitioned, okay? I really do think that going from this to this counts as gender affirming surgery, okay? This is basically a full transition. Long story short, by personally crafting Vance's political views to whatever's trendy, and by throwing loads of money at him, multi-millions of dollars, the largest donation ever given in history to boost a Senate candidate ever, Peter Thiel essentially placed his own political puppet in the White House. But that's not enough. That's just not enough. Thiel is hoping for a JD Vance presidency one day, meaning A, he's gotta disown his Indian family and instead marry Erica Kirk, and B, he can't be associated with these extremely unpopular foreign policies America is carrying out right now, which is why he's been kind of absent, hasn't he? I've seen more of this Cuban and this alcoholic 3 times divorced dad than the vice president recently, which is interesting. But let's go back to Epstein and focus on arguably one of the most damning Peter Thiel mentions in a newly released audio recording between Epstein and Ehud Barak, Israel's ex-prime minister.
He thought there was 2 cyber companies. Look out, and even though I know Peter, I've never met Peter Thiel, and everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange, like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah. He looks there under drugs.
However, he has a company called Palantir. So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of the best. I've never met him. He's going to come here next week. So I wanted to talk to him. And I talk to you. He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, that's what they pay Larry $1 million a year. Just to advise them.
What they are, it's a lobbyist. What they are?
They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley. These are the new Kleiner Perkins. Everybody, these are the smart boys.
Yeah.
So those 2 companies right away, in terms of I said that we need now.
Obviously, this whole World War III situation really makes companies like Palantir or Lockheed Martin, etc., curl their toes in happiness. But if you consider how insanely integrated Palantir technology is within both Israeli and US missile systems, do you really think it's a surprise that the guy who owes Peter Thiel big time for a little 2016 Russia-involved election rigging, maybe? You really think it's a surprise that all of a sudden now the US and Israeli military are working together openly for the first time in history, predominantly missile-based warfare as well? There is this bridge between these two militaries called Palantir. Epstein was best mates with multiple US presidents. Epstein was best mates with multiple Israeli prime ministers. Epstein put both of these countries onto Palantir and onto Peter Thiel, as is confirmed in the new files. But look, if we're talking about the Air Force's strength in these conflict-ridden times, it's good to know that Trump is appointing the best of the best to high-up positions in the US Air Force. Erica Cook!
Every morning I wake up to a new headline lying about me. I have comedians dressing up in whiteface. I have people saying I'm not fit to be CEO, and on and on.
Which leads me on to our next honorable mention, the man himself, Ehud Barak. Here he is posted up with Epstein and Woody fucking Allen. If you know anything about Woody Allen and Epstein, which you probably do, but if you know anything about Woody Allen specifically, this photo was a very bad look for my friend here. And that's right, not only do we now have a huge new treasure trove of photos linking Epstein to Israel, highlighting Epstein's obsession with Israel, basically. The new files also provide evidence of his links to a few Israeli prime ministers. By far the most mentioned one is Ehud Barak, though. These two were practically boyfriends. They were in love. I swear to God, these guys were romantical, spending so much time together that Ehud would literally resort to hiding his face whenever he entered Epstein's apartment after Epstein was basically found out. You know, in 2016, this guy was visiting Epstein's apartment like he was a secret lover, covering his face, hiding himself from the press. It really is like they had a secret romantic affair. Epstein let Ehud's mates sleep over all the time, including multiple Israeli spies sleeping in his New York townhouse for weeks and weeks at a time. Israeli MPs as well, and just people that Ehud Barak knew. Epstein was so lovely and kind to all these guys. Oh, and how could I forget, these two sweetheart lovers were also caught discussing their ambitious dreams of ethnically cleansing Palestine using 1 million white Russians and some favors from Putin. What? Very, very normal shit to talk about with your mate. Yeah.
I believe we have to break the monopoly of the Orthodox rabbinate and accept, in a sophisticated, subtle manner, open the gates for massive conversion into Judaism. It's a successful country. Many will apply, and we can control the quality much more effective than our ancestors or the founding fathers of Israel could did with the wave that it was a kind of salvation wave of Africa, from the Arab or from whatever. Now we can be selective. We can easily absorb another million. I used to tell Putin always, what we need is not just 1 more million. He changed Israel in a dramatic manner. The million Russians. I think that many will prefer to be Belarusian, or there are many young handsome girls. What? Tall.
This honestly shares so much about how Israel's leaders view their policy of ethnic cleansing. You know, dark-skinned Ugandan Jews aren't really Jewish enough to get given Israeli citizenship. Dark-skinned Ethiopian Jews aren't really Jewish to get Israeli citizenship. In fact, we'll sterilize your women and abduct your children instead. But hey, 1 million non-Jewish white Russians, come, please, come to me, here's your citizenship, bro, take it. I can't believe this isn't really like a taboo subject among Israel's leaders. They're just openly discussing this shit with non-Israeli government officials like Epstein about it. Wait, unless Epstein was an Israeli government official. If he worked for Mossad, that would be the only way Ehud Barak would have trusted him with theories like this, in my opinion, which would explain this all. The craziest thing about this evil mastermind plot dreamt up by Epstein and Ehud here is that it's actually happening right now. Yeah, Putin's invasion of Ukraine has led to so many Russians fleeing Russia, and there really is only so many countries Russians can move to. One of those countries just happens to be Israel. Since the war, there has been a fucking 400% increase of Russians moving to Israel. Epstein must be punching the air in happiness now. Thank you. He must be sitting down in hell, grinning from ear to ear. Or alternatively, he could be sitting in Tel Aviv grinning from ear to ear. But you know what else Epstein would probably be pretty gassed about? How his mate Tony Blair, the British MP who for the fun of it killed 1 million Iraqis just because he was a cuck for America, is now in charge of rebuilding Gaza because Epstein's other best mate, Trump, gave him that fucking role, and he's basically basing the entire rebuilding of Gaza off some fucking elementary school planning sketches drawn up by Epstein's best mate's Trump's son-in-law. Okay, next we have right-wing movements all across the West. So this is Steve Bannon, and this is Nigel Farage. He is the UK's most prominent far-right politician who may or may not win the next election. Steve Bannon had extensive links to Epstein. They were texting each other so much you'd think they were in sweet love. But this relationship essentially consisted of Bannon giving Epstein huge amounts of intelligence on the interior workings of all the 2016 anti-woke, anti-SJW based European political movements, especially in the UK, from Brexit to Jacob Rees-Mogg to Boris to Farage. This motherfucker was tapped in with everyone on the far right. Everyone in Epstein's camp was rubbing their hands in glee watching this far right movement take a hold of Europe. Take, for example, this email from Epstein to Peter Thiel. A return to tribalism, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed, as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding the next bargain. The public returns to tribalism, the elites exploit everyone and find bargains in the collapse of normal society. Does that sound maybe a little similar to exactly what's happening right now all across the West? Yes. Yeah, it does. On top of that, all Steve Bannon's emails in the new Epstein files expose how Russia helped fund loads of Europe's nationalist movements, even in fucking Wales of all places, alright? A lot of these deals were brokered by people in Epstein's circle, like Bannon, like Thiel, but also Epstein had some serious connections in the centrist, leftist side of Europe in the 2010s. Genuinely, if you're from Europe, Epstein almost definitely knew someone working for your country. And it's kind of interesting to see how he always dealt with like people a few steps down from the top, people with access to the highest level of political influence. He dealt with like diplomats or ministers. For example, the French culture minister, the French African diplomats, Slovakian diplomats, Russian UN ambassadors, Turkish ambassadors to the US.
I just wanted to ask you about what I read in the Epstein files about your association with him. Why did you introduce him to Peter Thiel and Vitaly Churkin? What were your dealings with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I didn't introduce him to those people, but all of us dealt with Jeffrey Epstein in the 80s as a business person. He was bigger than life. It was a 30-year story of this that I think most of us actually thought that he had built his wealth and his prowess over his international relations with Israel. That's always kind of the background. I didn't see the rest of it later in the 2015.
In the files that I read, you're having dealings with him after he became a convicted sex offender. Why?
Dealings meaning he was emailing me, asking me for access to the president of I was running a New York Stock Exchange company. He'd try and get a hold of me for relevant information. That was it.
You met with him, and you met with Vitaly Churkin, you met with Peter Thiel and Epstein.
Epstein very selectively compromised and utilized the lowest hanging fruit. The ones he could probably bribe, because they're not really rich, they're just powerful. And they were just powerful enough to give him access to the top. I do have to mention the Turkish and Eastern European connects Epstein had should be extremely scrutinized and investigated more than all the others, because these countries also have massive problems with human trafficking rings, especially girls being trafficked. Specifically, all the Kurdish disappearances in Turkey and Iraq and all throughout the Middle East, especially with, as we see now, all the Russian kidnappings, the wartime kidnappings. And to confirm what I'm saying isn't bullshit, a lot of these countries, Poland, Latvia, and Turkey, have all opened up huge human trafficking investigations following the new Epstein file releases. Also, I'll quickly mention Peter Mendelsohn. Here he is in Epstein's crib with his cheeks out. Here he is in Jeffrey's Gmail, giving him insider trading information on the 2008 $500 billion EU bailout. Damn! And here he is in the current UK Parliament. All these guys knew about his relationship to Epstein before allowing him such a powerful position. And here he is in the House of Lords, which basically means he was a Lord of the Land, which is this medieval shit we still have in the UK to this day. And people like Peter Mendelsohn essentially hold veto power over any British law. And we pay for like their champagne. I'm not joking. With our taxes, we pay these people to just be lords over us in this golden chamber, and they drink champagne and decide on laws undemocratically, completely undemocratically. So you can see why the British public got a bit mad that Peter Mendelsohn was one of these guys. However, the situation with this is very similar to another situation with another people. There are two unelected bodies in the UK which hold completely undemocratic power over the citizens, and we pay for their lavish luxury lifestyles. That being the House of Lords and the royal family. Where do I even start with these guys? I mean, look at my royal family, bro. Genuinely look at my fucking overlords, bro. Look at my royal family. Look at where my taxes are going. Look.
July of this year, Epstein was arrested on charges of trafficking and abusing dozens of girls. One of Epstein's accusers, Virginia Roberts, has made allegations against you. She described dancing with you and you profusely sweating, and that she went on to have
a slight problem with the sweating, because I have a peculiar medical condition, which is that I don't sweat. Oh, actually, yes, I didn't sweat at the time because I had suffered what I would describe as an overdose of adrenaline in the Falklands War when I was shot at. I simply, it was almost impossible for me to sweat. On that particular day, which is the 10th of March, I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking.
Why would you remember that so specifically?
Because going to Pizza Express in Woking is an unusual thing for me to do. a very unusual thing for me to do. I've only been through Woking a couple of times, and I remember it weirdly distinctly.
Look man, I've been to Woking. I don't remember a thing. I think it's genuinely the most boring, forgettable city in the UK. So based on that alone, I'm gonna have to say this story is cap. Also, my fellow Brits, you should all know that Prince Andrew was able to end the court case against him. He was able to walk away scot-free. Do you want to know why? Because he paid Virginia a £12 million settlement, and his mummy, the Queen, paid her an extra £2 million settlement. Slight problem with this: they are royals. They haven't earned a penny of their own money in their entire fucking lives. The British royals are funded by the British public. £14 million of fucking taxpayer money being used to free Prince Andrew. Now, another royal family that are involved with Epstein is the Norwegian royal family. One of their princesses was extremely involved with Epstein. Actually, from the emails, seemingly she was a bop, as one would say. There are other royal families, especially Middle Eastern royal families, that were wrapped up in way more Epstein scandals, obviously, and I'll get onto the Saudis and the Gulf states in a second, but I just wanted to shout out the Norwegian royal family because this is their fucking prince right now. And for all royals from any country, can we just agree to put them in like a big Hunger Games and then drop the winner in a tank of hydrochloric acid, maybe? I think something like this would be appropriate. Bill Gates, right? Obviously, I've got so many bad things I could say about this guy, but there is one Epstein-Bill Gates interaction which I think really explains everything you need to know about these guys. Epstein was working his usual role as a fixer for any and all deals involving politicians or influential figures, and this also apparently included him facilitating this deal between Bill Gates and a pharmacy, and the deal was the purchase of gonorrhea medication. Epstein bought Bill Gates his STD medicine. Oh my god. Always the middleman, bro. He always had to get in on a deal. I bet he upcharged the medicine by like 10% or something, you know? Epstein always had to be in the middle of every transaction ever, even if it's STD based. Yeah. Here's a good one. Howard Lutnick. He is Trump's Secretary of Commerce right now. Here he is greeting everyone very enthusiastically at Trump's speech. This is the man that said he only went to Epstein's island once for lunch one time.
Secretary Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again.
Breaking with the FBI and Department of Justice, one of President Trump's cabinet secretaries claiming that high-profile associates of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein not only knew of his behavior, but some even participated.
Did they see it and ignore it, or
no? They participated.
Right.
That's what his MO was. You know, get a massage, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume, was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Epstein's former neighbor, recounting his alleged experience with the deceased billionaire to the New York Post, saying he believes Epstein may have traded alleged blackmail videos for a lesser prison sentence during his first criminal case in 2008.
I assume, way back when, they traded those videos in exchange for him getting that 18-month sentence.
Lutnick describing Epstein as gross.
I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage. Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry, we have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him.
However, there are multiple pics of him on the island in different fits. Interestingly, when this was found out, they all got deleted out of the files very quickly. Yet it was scrubbed like a couple weeks ago by the DOJ. Now, I don't know about you, but this photo doesn't really look like lunch. Like, where the sandwiches at, bro? Where the cups of tea? I don't know. It doesn't look very lunch-like to me, man. Obviously, the fact that there are multiple photos of him in multiple outfits on multiple different days, and in the logs, he was like enthusiastically describing the ages of children he's going to bring to the island for Epstein, confirms that he was always on cap. And to this day, he is still Trump's main guy. And as always, his main role still seems to be just to laugh. Just to giggle, you know? Another great guy I want to point out is Putin. I've gone over humongous amounts of Epstein-Russia links, but you know what? I'll leave it up to a real Russian, my friend NoFuckers, to explain the true extent of the Kremlin's Epstein two-man.
Alright folks, so a bunch of new emails have been recently made public from the Epstein files, and I'm sure all of you guys have already heard the bombshell, the big one, about Trump blowing Bubba or whatever. Look guys, all I can say honestly as a Russian is, I'm not surprised whatsoever. The Russian propaganda has been telling me for the past like 10 years that everybody in the West is gay and woke and so on, so I guess they were correct in the end, you guys. I mean, even a broken clock strokes twice a day or whatever the saying is, right? But for me as a Russian, the most interesting by far is not even the relationship between these two American presidents. It's actually the fact that the presidents of my countries mentioned these Epstein files. And apparently it's actually Vladimir Putin who has the video of Donald Trump blowing Bubba. The thing is that I'm not exactly surprised that Putin is mentioned in the Epstein files. Because true Putin lore scholars like myself all know that classic video that was recorded 20 years ago where Vladimir Putin was out in public during some kind of national celebration and he went up to a little boy, sat down in front of him, and then for some reason, in front of everybody, lifted the boy's shirt up and kissed him on his stomach. What? Yes, this video is not AI, this is something that actually happened. Now, why did Vladimir Putin do that? I'm not exactly sure, guys. What's actually funny is that apparently they found the kid now 20 years later, and now he's actually become a soldier, and he's currently apparently a professor in a military university, preparing future soldiers of Russia, so I guess Putin's case is like the mark of the beast or something. But all I'm saying is seeing the depravity of politicians all over the world in the West, knowing the nature of Russian politicians, I wouldn't put it past them to be kitty diddlers, basically, right? And Vladimir Putin is probably a Diddy a blood. Who did it? Vlad did it. Because if the elites in the West are doing it, why wouldn't Russian elites do it as well, right? And also, I don't think it's far-fetched to imagine that if there indeed was a video out there of Trump blowing Bubba and blowing bubbles, it is actually very possible that this is the exact kind of video ex-KGB agents would keep on themselves in order to blackmail somebody, which, by the way, is classic KGB strategy. Epstein apparently was involved with Russian officials, like Russian diplomats, basically. For example, the Russian foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, for example, talking to the leader of the Council of Europe at the time from Norway, Epstein said, "I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me." Epstein talked to the UN ambassador Churkin, saying that he was great and that he understood Trump after our conversations. And also in conversation with Larry Summers, Summers asked, "Do the Russians have stuff on Trump?" Today was appalling even by his standards. And then Epstein replied the next day saying, "My email is full with similar comments." Wow. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? This Epstein guy had friends everywhere. And also Russian officials who claim to be from the base country that is opposed to, you know, Western degeneracy and so on. They were literally talking to like an international PDF file, you know what I'm saying? A convicted sex offender involved with the American government, and you know, there's no issue with that. That is completely fine. That makes sense. Because that is something that base conservative people with family values would do. But you know, honestly, who gives a shit about any of that? We all care about Donald Trump blowing bubbles. So, in context, Jeffrey Epstein to his brother Mark sent an email saying that everything is good and that Steve Bannon is with him, and Epstein's brother responds saying, "Ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump Bubba." Now Epstein's brother is actually currently making excuses and saying that we all misunderstood this text and that Bubba is actually not referring to Bill Clinton. But honestly, who cares? Like, even if it wasn't Bill Clinton, you're still saying that Vladimir Putin has photos of Trump performing sex on someone, right? That's already crazy to me, okay? That is crazy enough to say, hold the fort, pause, something is wrong here. And the reason we actually believe that Vladimir Putin in his possession might actually have these photos of Donald Trump that were described is because this is like actually a classic tradition of the Russian special forces, and in fact Vladimir Putin kind of started his entire career off and kind of became president in the first place because he managed to blackmail some guy for President Yeltsin. And in particular, I'm talking about the year of 1999, when there was a huge scandal involving the general prosecutor of Russia, Yuri Skuratov, who had a video of him with two prostitutes leak and then shown on TV, which actually led to his resignation. And would you guys like to guess who was the main investigator and the main person involved in this case, and who managed to find this incredible incriminating evidence? You don't have to guess, guys, it was Vladimir Putin. At the time, he was the head of the FSB, essentially Russia's special services. Vladimir Putin was personally involved in this case and paid a lot of attention to it, and also it was him that confirmed that these videos were indeed real and that the person in the video was actually the general prosecutor. And essentially, people who were around in Russian politics in the 90s claimed that this was the exact moment when Boris Yeltsin really started paying attention to Vladimir Putin as a possible successor of sorts, as a guy that he could trust, because Vladimir Putin basically went against the people, he went against public interest, he supported corruption, and he supported the family of Boris Yeltsin, and he defended Boris Yeltsin over everything, and simply just removed his op from power. And in Russia, it's pretty much well known at this point that the reason why Vladimir Putin was actually chosen as the successor by Yeltsin is because Yeltsin was in a lot of trouble. He would have been actually facing prison time after he stopped being president for the shit that he did, but since Vladimir Putin was his guy, Putin basically reassured him that nothing is gonna happen to him or his family if he's gonna be in power. So yes, Boris Yeltsin also sold out the country because he was too greedy and because he was a corrupt piece of shit. Absolute cinema, guys. So the point is that yes, Vladimir Putin literally started his career with a blackmail operation in which he honeypotted some guy with two prostitutes, and then they put it out in public so the guy gets fired. He was literally trained to do this in the KGB. For his entire life, it is his modus operandi, and that is why I would not be surprised whatsoever if he actually has a video of Trump Bubba.
There's this idea that Russia is like anti-Israel and anti-Epstein and anti-Western. I don't think that's really the case, and I think that can be proved by how much contact the Kremlin had with Epstein. My Russian comrade NoFuck has actually made another video explaining this geopolitical phenomenon, and I will roll the first 2 minutes of that video for you right now, but the whole thing's up on his channel, obviously.
This is Ber Lazar, the chief rabbi of Russia, also known in the West as Putin's rabbi. In 2024, Ber Lazar publicly stated that he blessed the IDF troops heading to Gaza and voiced his full support for Israel. In 2025, Lazar was awarded the State Order of Honor by Vladimir Putin, which is one of the highest decorations in all of Russia. Many people in the world today see the Russian President Vladimir Putin as this great anti-Western leader, a sort of a Che Guevara who is fighting for the weak and the exploited and is standing up against Western imperialism and American interests. By extension, many also think that Putin is a strict anti-Zionist who stands against Israel and always supports the Palestinian resistance. Check this out, for example. 2026 so far, Russia deported every Israeli citizen, deported every Rothschild family member. And this has almost 600,000 likes on a complete made-up lie. No, Vladimir Putin did not kick out all Israelis from Russia. If he did that, then half of his oligarch friends would be gone now. But a lot of people do think that Putin hates Israel. You see, I saw this one Instagram reel that showed that Vladimir Putin did not shake Netanyahu's hand at one time. Holy based Putin, I knew that he's on the right side of history. The real truth is that Vladimir Putin has actually had a very close relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu that goes back decades. And both of them regularly visit each other's countries to help each other spread propaganda. In March 2026, when discussing the potential visit of Netanyahu to Moscow, the Israeli ambassador to Russia described Vladimir Putin as a great friend of Israel. And he's actually been considered that as early as the year 2003, when the Israeli PM Ariel Sharon called Vladimir Putin a true friend of Israel. Putin's entire presidency has been described as largely pro-Israel by many Western reports, and in 2025 it was revealed that Russia has actually been one of the main suppliers of oil and refined fuels to Israel during the Gaza genocide, which Vladimir Putin of course claimed to be against publicly, but you know, he would never lie, right? Russia and Israel actually have a lot of cultural ties, and Vladimir Putin has previously claimed that he considers Israel to be part of the Russian walls.
Хочу обратить ваше внимание, что в Израиле проживает почти 2 миллиона человек, выходцев из бывшего Советского Союза и Российской Федерации. Это почти русскоговорящая страна сегодня.
And he talks about this all the time, stressing the point that the relationship with Israel is extremely important to Russia. Putin even claimed that he considers Russian speakers living in Israel as his compatriots and a part of Russia. And while the far-right and the pro-Russian influencers claim that Vladimir Putin is fighting against Israel, the reality is not so black and white, and there's actually been many situations in which Israel actually acted against Russia's enemies like Ukraine or Georgia in the interests of Vladimir Putin.
My main point here is that just because some nations on this spinning rock we call home might be somewhat anti-Western doesn't mean they are necessarily morally superior to the West. I will prove that by now telling you about one of the most insane mentions on these files, which is Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and all the Gulf states. Hold on to your seats for this one, man. This one is absolutely insane. Okay, so earlier I posed this theory about a certain torture-related email matching the movements of Netanyahu at the time. However, I do have to correct myself. Recently, the sender of this email was confirmed to not be Netanyahu, but it was actually the Emirati billionaire Sultan Ahmed bin Sulaiman, who was extremely close to Epstein, who referred to the Sultan as one of his most trusted friends. And this guy was so massively involved in the UAE and especially involved in Dubai's controversial rapid development, the S word. But you know what? It may as well be Netanyahu, since these two countries are so aligned, and personally I hate both nations with a similar passion. The Gulf states and Saudi are very well documented hotspots for human trafficking, not only impoverished Nepali dudes in labor camps, entire skyscrapers with their bare hands. Also, we know all the horror stories of the more devious side of human trafficking out here, the old porta potties, you know. I'm not talking about their lack of a sewage system, I'm talking about the kind of shit Jeffrey Epstein's mouth would have watered at. So it's no surprise this man had a secret Saudi identity. When Epstein's crib was raided, the police found a legit Austrian passport which had Epstein's photo, however a false name, a false date of birth. The listed residence was in Saudi Arabia and it contained stamps indicating travel to France, the UK, Spain and Saudi Arabia in the 1980s. Now, why would Epstein need to travel to Western Europe under a fake identity? He claimed the passport was for personal protection, suggesting it was meant for if he got kidnapped as a Jewish American traveling in the Middle East. This argument alone would obviously be bullshit. I mean, I don't know how an Austrian passport would help you out in that situation. However, we know for certain he did not primarily use it to travel around the Middle East. He mainly used it to go to Western Europe, which is very suspicious. And here it is, man. This is the most 4K evidence you could possibly find, yet every Saudi will still tell you it's fake. This is in the files, bro. This is in the fucking files. It's Epstein and the current leader of Saudi Arabia. No, bro. It's AI. Wallahi, it's AI, bro.
Bro, all bullshit, حبيبي. استغفر الله. كس حبايب أمك على أمك بنقحبة.
But the Epstein Saudi connection gets even worse. It gets even worse, bro. How would that even be possible, huh? Well, these new files expose that Epstein imported fabric from the Kaaba, Islam's most important mosque in Mecca. You know, the one everyone pilgrimages to and circles around, and they try and grab that rock. And there's that video of a guy saying $500 million.
$500 million. Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya Allah! Ya Allah!
Yeah, Epstein imported that fucking fabric to his New York townhouse. If you don't understand how absolutely unthinkably insane this is, then you probably don't know much about Islam. Every Muslim on planet Earth since the Prophet Muhammad's divine revelation, prays facing the Kaaba. Throughout the entirety of human history, every Muslim since Muhammad has used a compass to point in the direction of the Kaaba when they pray. It is the single most important material thing in Islam. Therefore, for about 2 billion people, a quarter of the entire fucking population of the earth, the most important material thing is the Kaaba. And Jeffrey fucking Epstein somehow had a piece of it imported from Saudi. This fabric covering has the Shahada on it. It's called the Kiswa, and it is replaced annually during Hajj. It's so unbelievably limited. It's insane. It's unbelievable. You will see tiny fractures, microscopic little particles of the Kiswa being sold for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, bro. So if you really want my opinion, this photo could be AI. It doesn't really matter. Let's just write it off completely. The fact that this man had access to potentially the most valuable bit of fabric on the face of the planet Earth, which is not even sold first hand, by the way. It's only gifted by the Saudi regime in return for favors. And not only did he have a bit of it, he had like a whole section of the Kiswa, bro. He had a whole chunk of it. This could be like worth billions. That shows me that he was owed unthinkable favors by the Saudi government. Unfortunately, I don't think we will ever know the truth about the extent of Epstein's Middle Eastern operations, because these regimes, his movement within the Middle East would be uninvestigatable. He had a whole secret identity. Like, stuff like this will never make it out of the Saudi royal family like it would in the West. But I think you can imagine what I'm imagining in terms of the scope of Epstein's influence throughout the Gulf region. I mean, this guy was so invested in complicated geopolitics around 2010, it's insane. He was emailing the whole gang like minor updates on niche Saudi internal investigations and stuff. Bear in mind, Trump again and again has tried to paint Epstein as this lone wolf, not involved with any intelligence or any blackmail operation or any higher up level in any country. No. He was just simply a freaky rich financier. He was just a freaky finance bro, okay? Why on earth would a random New York financier have the corner of the Kiswa? Why on earth would some random New York dude be informing his friends of minor updates within internal Saudi royal family dynamics? It once again leads me to the same conclusion, as always. All right, Elon Musk. I've already mentioned his pathetic begging to be let onto everyone's favorite island, but I also wanted to mention how he's now apparently LARPing on Twitter that he's somehow anti-Epstein. Bro, you were begging to hang out with this guy. Don't now be acting like just because you and Trump had a falling out, it suddenly means you're now anti-Trump and you're this force against Trump. That's fucking insane. This man Elon is genuinely single-handedly responsible for Trump being in power. I truly think without the whole X push behind Trump in the 2024 election cycle, I don't think Trump would have got in, bro. I don't think he would have. You're single-handedly responsible for this guy getting in. You were begging to be on Epstein's island with all them cool guys, and now you're backtracking. There's loads of ex-MAGA that are now resorting to shit like this. You are the fucking problem. Next up, Kash Patel / the FBI. Obviously, I could say 1,010 words about this guy, but I do want to point out that this guy lied under oath, like probably the worst out of anyone I've ever seen, because he was, saying that the Epstein files had no child material on them, like at all. He said under oath that there's no child exploitation material on the files whatsoever. I think that was untrue, because look at him before and look at him after. He saw enough. He could have told the truth. He knew the truth then. And obviously, when the new files came out, there was countless fucking 4K photos of child on the files. And this man, Cash, his whole job, his whole career was just meant to be to scour through those files. However, he was busy with some more important business.
You know, why is it that the director of the FBI has his private jet that's funded by the U.S. taxpayer dollar flown in from Manassas Airfield to Reagan National instead of taking his 3-car up-armored suburban motorcade 35 miles to take the plane? It's $5,000 a pop every time that plane takes off and lands. It's $5,000 a pop every time that plane takes off and lands.
Also, quickly, I want to talk about the Clintons. Obviously, it's pretty common knowledge that they're about as bad as it can possibly get when it comes to Epstein, but I did just want to include some clips from their recent depositions in this video. They're such a joy to watch. For example, here we have Bill Clinton reminiscing on the good old times whilst looking over incriminating material regarding Epstein. Dude, did you not get the message? You're meant to look horrified, not full of joy. This is how I look at pictures of me and my friends, my favorite memories and stuff. I can just tell he was reminiscing on them freak-offs, bro. Look at that sparkle in his eyes.
Did you know one of the witnesses who testified in the Epstein cases that Epstein said, you quote, like them young? Why would Epstein say that about you?
Are you asking his opinion? You're asking him to think about why Mr. Epstein would say
Correct.
something about him?
Why would Epstein say that about
So she's asking
president?
you to try to be in Mr. Epstein's mind and guess at what Mr. Epstein would have thought about.
Clinton likes them young, referring to girls.
That's not true.
What's not true?
That I have any interest in underage.
I didn't say underage, I said young.
But it's still not true.
Is an intern young?
Yes.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible. I misled people, including even my wife. I deeply regret that.
Have you ever had contact with an individual by the name of Shantae Davies?
I believe Shantae, that's a distinctive name, and so I think that was the name of one of his flight attendants.
Okay. She's been described on being on a 2002 Africa trip and providing massages. Was she or any other young female on that trip underage at that time?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you ever receive a massage or have physical contact from her or anyone else on that trip?
You've seen the pictures. There was one time when I was sitting up and I got a back rub, a neck rub.
Okay.
And I think Shantae did it, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
And finally, I want to give a shout out to Ghislaine, obviously, my main girl. She is now requesting from Trump to be removed from prison. She was scheduled to do a deposition, do a big speech on like new evidence. She refused to do that, basically stated she ain't gonna open her mouth till she's free, which I think might potentially be a kind of secret blackmail threat. Get me out of prison or I will tell on you, Mr. Trump. This is very similar to what the Clintons did with their push to do their deposition publicly. They're basically saying, Mr. Trump, cut us some slack, stop calling us out, so stop being so mean about our names, redact us from the files a bit, or else we will tell the press about your dirtiest secrets with Epstein, because we know what you did. If Trump completely airs Ghislaine or the Clintons out completely, then they have nothing to lose by just airing him out. And he's the president, so he has a bit more to lose than them. And I'm talking about Hillary and Bill whistleblowing on shit that's a lot worse than being painted in a dress, you know? And by the way, as soon as they threatened him with this by saying they would do their deposition publicly instead of privately, Trump changed his tune completely. He's really toned down how much he shits on the Clintons, don't you think? And much like them, Trump has really changed his tune with Ghislaine over the past few years as she becomes more and more of a blackmail threat to him. This bitch is using her old tricks. Blackmail, you know? Yeah, despite Trump betraying his dead homie, calling Jeffrey every insult under the sun, he has surprisingly not applied this to Ghislaine, even though she's been found guilty. I wish her well. He literally sent his boys to go interview her instead of initially redacting the files, remember? In return, she has been moved by Trump to the lowest level security prison possible. She has a dog. Apparently she has a fucking puppy. She's been granted a puppy in prison, which reminds me a bit of Epstein's first imprisonment in 2008. You know, when he only had to sleep in the prison and the rest of the day he was free to go out on work leave and just do his business as usual. And they gave him a private room with his own fucking bed and he still cried about it. Just like her late mans, Ghislaine makes all these videos of her, you know, crying and looking upset. Are we forgetting that this bitch trafficked thousands of kids and upwarded those kids? Like, I genuinely would like for you to try and think of a worse criminal. Please try and come up with something you could do that is worse than what Ghislaine did. There's none. There's literally none. MAGA will do these like pred catcher videos, you know? They love that shit. They get off on that shit, watching people get caught. But then Trump will defend potentially the publicly worst people we've seen in recent times. And they're cool with it. What? They're saying no, Ghislaine might deserve to be free from prison. What? Ghislaine wasn't quite high profile enough to receive a fake like her husband did. Because, you know, if we're being realistic, that's what happened to old Jeff, isn't it? The cameras mysteriously cut out. The prison guards mysteriously fell asleep. The autopsy forensic reports were mysteriously not released. The DOJ's raw footage was mysteriously edited by Premiere Pro, whatever. But Ghislaine is still alive and is currently serving 20 years in prison for, I quote, conspiring to exploit and abuse multiple minors over the course of a decade. I think we can all agree she did a bit more than that, but you want to know what's more shocking? Well, because Trump has stated the Epstein files don't exist, it's all a hoax made up by fucking Obama, you know, there is currently within MAGA a fucking Free Ghislaine movement. Look at this. Free Ghislaine Maxwell.
Like, there are people unironically cheering for Ghislaine Maxwell as if she's some kind of fucking hero right now. She is a child trafficker.
You know what? I actually understand why this happened. Because absolutist Trump supporters will just take whatever he says as fact. And if you blindly believe Trump, then right now you have to assume that the Epstein files are a hoax.
Yeah, let's look at the Epstein list. There isn't one. Barack Obama has been in charge of everything for the last 12 years.
The last 12 years, even during Trump's first term?
No, he didn't do it then.
And if it's all fake and made up, then Ghislaine did nothing wrong, did she? I'll take it back to the start of this video. Remember Alan Dershowitz, Epstein's old lawyer? Also, coincidentally, Trump's old lawyer, may I add? Well, now he's saying Ghislaine deserves immunity. She deserves to be exempt from legal prosecution in return for testifying the truth.
If she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify. And there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information.
Bear in mind, this man was Trump's attorney in 2020, just 5 years ago. I think that truth might just be a little bit distorted in someone's favor, I think. Maybe, possibly. Is this not the biggest conflict of interest in history ever? Like, look, here is a tweet from Ghislaine Maxwell's attorney. I can confirm that we are in discussions with the government and Ghislaine will always testify truthfully. We are grateful to President Trump for his commitment to uncovering the truth in this case. No, bruh. Keep that bitch locked up. Throw away the key, bro. Throw away away the fucking key, melt it into molten lava. What are you doing? Even the House of Representatives Oversight Committee have voted for a deposition of Ghislaine Maxwell. You know, she should appear in court, give a testimony. Trump is desperately doing damage control. He sent his old lawyer, Todd Blanche, to go have a chat with Ghislaine. Go have a little one-on-one. I wonder what they're talking about.
Testimony we're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Ms. Maxwell, do you have any questions before we begin?
I do not.
Ms. Maxwell, were you a close friend and confidant of Jeffrey Epstein?
I would like to answer your question, but on the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer this question and any related questions. My habeas petition is pending in the Southern District of New York. I therefore invoke my right to silence under the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
Somehow we are living in such a hellhole of a time that I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if I saw Ghislaine Maxwell pardoned and freed by Trump to live out the American retiree Florida paradise on the news. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that as a headline on the news, you know? Now obviously this is all just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to who is guilty within the Epstein spiderweb. I would implore you to do your own research, go have a look through the file database, go Google your country and the word Epstein, and I'm sure whoever you are, the Big Jeff is somehow slightly, minutely even involved in your life, you know? And different countries are gonna treat this differently. Where I'm from, all hell broke loose when the Peter Mendelsohn Keir Starmer scandal came out. Or you could choose to be like the USA and just focus on Obama monkey memes or Iran and forget about the Epstein files ever happening in the first place. But the sad truth is that, in my opinion, people like Epstein are actually the ones pulling the strings behind the scenes and making insane foreign policies like Iran happen. Usually, a good rule of thumb is if a war makes no sense and there's no public support for it, someone else aside from the government is in charge. I mean, remember the last time a president tried to stop a pointless war from happening and also tried to stop Israel from making nukes? Now, don't worry. I'm not going to start listing off conspiracy theories, but in a way, unfortunately, I think conspiracy theories have actually been used intentionally by Trump and MAGA to invalidate and delegitimize the Epstein files to the average person, because when the average person sees Alex Jones ranting about pizza, it doesn't matter if it's true or not, they write that shit off as insane and as a conspiracy theory, right? Trump wants all America's average, apolitical, non-brain rot, black-pilled citizens like me and you. He wants the normal average American to just see people ranting like Alex Jones and write off the whole Epstein files as nonsense, which is pretty easy to accidentally do considering how insanely convoluted and confusing the DOJ has made this file release. It's almost impossible to form a clear, level-headed thought about these files, isn't it? Which is also why it took me over a month to make this fucking video. Also, when you got people focusing on Pizzagate or Zohran Mamdani's mum or Epstein being alive in Tel Aviv or AI Ghislaine Maxwell being real, they kind of stopped focusing on how Trump and Epstein were literally best mates for decades. This is like a kind of theory versus concrete truth, reality nuke, okay? And what we know about the reality of this shit is literally only 2% of the iceberg, and honestly, Epstein is probably not even 1% of the global elite network iceberg. We probably just won't ever know. I actually think it's probably quite convenient for the world's elite class to have this one Easter Island faced ass guy, Mr. Epstein, completely thrown under the bus, because they can run with the narrative Trump's going with now, which is, oh well, that's that, we caught him, we got the one guy running this one creep network all by himself, what a loser, lucky for us, he's dead and gone. So just enjoy your muck chicken and your Pepsi and your cherry ice flavored geek bar and get on with your day, bro. Get on with your life. Oh, and by the way, whatever you do, don't listen to Bad Bunny. Listen to that Kid Rock instead, bro. Listen to Kid Rock. Wow, if you're listening to these words leave my gob right now, it means you genuinely sat through 2 hours of me talking shit. You genuinely dedicated 2 hours of your life to my creation. And I really, actually, from the bottom of my heart and my soul, want to say thank you. I know this video took me an unbelievably, ridiculously long amount of time to make, but I really wanted to get it perfect, cover everything I felt needed covering, get all the most up-to-date memes in there. So thank you for your patience. Unfortunately, I think there is a quite high likelihood that this video may get demonetized, plus a bit suppressed in YouTube's algorithm due to the subject matter, if you know what I mean. Recently, a bunch of my videos have been demonetized. Some have even been taken down. Can you believe it? So I kindly ask you, my friend, just for a little like, just for a little comment. Honestly, just press any of these buttons here. Smash anything you want in this section and you will help up the engagement. And together, we can potentially hit 1 billion views. Alright, this is my goal. But you want to know what is my other goal? To 10x ratio Netanyahu in subscriber count on this platform. That's right, you guys know this. We got so close, but upsettingly, my man's suddenly got a bunch of motion or something, so the race is back on. Please hit that subscribe. If you know someone who's a fan who isn't subscribed, tell them to subscribe. We got a ratio Netanyahu finally, man. Thank you for watching, guys. More normal length videos very soon. Smash like, listen to this outro music. If you like it, it's linked in the description as always. Okay, bye.